Hi, welcome to our Sundog panel. I'm Rebecca Starks. I'm on the board, as are Meg Reynolds and Bill Drislane, and Frances Cannon is our managing director. We wanted to just share some of our programs with you, answer any questions about Sundog, and also we'll read some of the work of people we've published or in other ways promoted through our organization. And unfortunately, two of the people who were supposed to be on the panel came down with COVID, Partridge Boswell and Michael Fleming won't be here today, but we will read from Michael's work, and we'll just talk about Sundog with people. And we have Stephen Cramer is going to read from a book that Sundog published, also of an anthology that he worked on. So that's where we are. And I think we'll start by talking about the major programs that Sundog runs through the year. So maybe we'll start with what just happened. Bill Drislane will talk about Justice and Poetry for All and what that looks like every year.
Certainly. If you don't mind, I'm going to...
Yeah.
Michael Fleming was at my house, and he's gone, but so Justice in Poetry for All has been a program that was started by Mary Jane Dickerson, who was one of the co-founders of Sundog, with another board member, Judy Yarnell, and to have an event that is a venue for voices that are not necessarily always heard. So the first Justice and Poetry event was in 2018. It was celebrating Black American poetry, and in the following year, 2019, it was celebrating the voices of new Americans. And just this past July was celebrating the indigenous voices of the poetry of New England. And we had a wonderful afternoon in Kilcare State Park with members of the Abenaki and Wabanaki people with a heritage. And so we are giving the voices a venue for the poets, the writers of these various groups that you might say are on the margins of society. And we've been doing this annually. We've had great support for it. And we'll be, Meg and I believe, will be working on the next program coming next year. Yet to be entirely, we're just starting even talking about it. So that's one of our signature programs. We had 2 years during COVID that we were not able to have it, but it was wonderful to have it back in July with great, we had Morgan Lamphere was a musician with the Abenaki drum, and he started the program. And all of the programs that we've had a musical piece to it that promotes the culture. So we're looking forward to continue this program.
Great. And then Meg, maybe you could talk about Share Your Heart that you were involved with.
Absolutely. Share Your Heart, Share Your World is a program that Sundog runs each year to make poetry accessible to to students, to high school students from the area. So a group of students from several different schools came together at Main Street Landing this past year and participated in poetry workshops from a variety of local poets who led these workshops. So Rajni Edens, myself, Karen McCadden, and several other folks were leading these themed poetry workshops where we discussed different things and engaged students. And then Bianca Stone was the keynote speaker and did a sort of speech and workshop conversation in the afternoon that the students got to participate in. And it does what many of the programs at Sundog does, which makes poetry communal. It takes what is otherwise sometimes an isolating thing and makes it accessible to students to hopefully inspire a continued life with poetry. Francis Cannon was an incredible organizer of that event. And so it was so fun to participate in. Being with high school students in person after 2 years away from with the pandemic was electric, and they were lovely. So we'll do that again next year and gather up more students to participate.
And the fascination of the high school work in the spring, the Larissa Hebert, who's now on the board, brought a small busload of those students to the Justice and Poetry event in July, and they were absolutely mesmerized and working with the poet Suzanne Rancourt. It was wonderful to see them.
Yeah. They also participated in some of the recording of the event. So we have students that are participating in poetry workshops, but also making videos of the event itself and helping with promotion. And so there's lots of opportunities for different kinds of poetic engagement in these programs for students.
Great, and then I'll just talk about two other programs we have. One is a writing workshop, and it used to be a weekend in November, I think, at the Fielder Farm in Huntington. And during COVID times, we've moved it to a single day, a full day at Fielder Farm outdoors with different themes. We just had one in August with Liz Powell and Angela Patton leading a rewilding theme. And I see someone who was there, and it's been great. There have been people who come year after year, and then the new faces also. So that has always been, and that's actually what brought me into Sundog, was doing one of those workshops a few years back where I met Bill. And so I encourage you, if you're ever looking for just a day-long retreat outdoors, or if it moves back into the weekend, that's even more wonderful because you get more time to really connect with people and share food and stories and poems. And then the other thing that we do throughout the year is something called AMP Nights for art, music, and poetry, where we try to mix these genres or bring them together in ways that complement each other and find a poet, an artist, a visual artist, and a musician or a group of musicians to kind of alternate and share their work together in an evening setting. So we are always looking for new performers, and it's a complicated process it's hard to choose among the riches that we have in Vermont. But if you are ever interested in sharing your own work, we welcome people to kind of reach out and just get yourself on a list that will then be chosen from for our next events. And then lastly, we have something going on right now. So I'm going to have Francis Cannon talk about that, the book award.
Yes, and I'll just quickly follow up on what Rebecca was saying, that we have 2 sign-up sheets here. And so we're hoping that anyone who might be interested in any of these programs that we're talking about, or just getting involved, or getting on our newsletter, they're right up here. And then also, if you don't want to add your name to the newsletter, we only send those out once a month or so, unless there are lots of events that we're trying to advertise. And then there are postcards that have our website. And I'll just make a quick note that please do check out our website and send an email, but the address we have recently changed. So everything's valid. except the address. So please come take a postcard and add your name to the sign-up sheets here if you are curious. So another program among these many Sundog poetry programs that I'm thrilled to have been able to participate in is my favorite, which is currently underway, and it's the Sundog Poetry Book Award. And that, just to let all of you know, if you have a manuscript, it's for a first or second book by a Vermont author. So if you already have one book, you can still send in your manuscript. If you have no books, also great. If you have 2 or more, then congratulations, but don't send us your manuscript. And it's for a full-length book of poetry. So I absolutely love chapbooks, but I think for this particular book award, we're looking to celebrate and publish the book, a full-length book by a Vermont poet. And the publisher is Green Writers Press. And so we have some examples up here, and I'll just point out for now, these 2 books. So Lucas Farrell was the winner of the poetry book. His manuscript was selected 2 years ago or 3 years ago. COVID. 2 years ago. And so please come take a look. And I just attended the visual poetry panel, which Meg Reynolds was also sitting on. And Lucas Farrell's poems are very unique and visual. So please engage with his poems and take a look at that. So Green Writers Press published this. Dee Dee Cummings, who is the editor, is wandering around the festival. So she's here. She's the editor for Green Writers Press. So Sundog pairs with Green Writers Press, and we host the contest. And this year we're open for submissions until the end of September. And there's a chance that we might extend the deadline, but just in case we don't extend the deadline, please get your manuscripts in. The last year's winner, Michael Fleming, was going to be on this panel. His manuscript was selected by Vivi Francis, who was the final judge. And the first round readers were Adri Cousireau, who was reading last night, and Benjamin Ailshire, who was on a panel today and was reading last night. And Steve Cramer, sitting right here, was also a first round reader for that. And then Vivi Francis was the final judge, and she selected Michael Fleming. So I'm going to read one poem out of Michael's book, and I was privileged to have been a part of the editing process as well as the design process. So I helped Michael to design his book with Dee Dee's help, and I illustrated the book as well. And so Michael Fleming was very disappointed that he couldn't be on this panel because he has COVID, but he wrote to both of us to ask to please insist that we read this poem, because I think the reason why he chose this poem is that he really likes my illustration that pairs with the poem. So I'll just hold it up. But it was a pleasure to work with Michael, and he's a wonderful human. Get to know him when you can. So this is Reptiles from his book, Bags and Tools. Evolve? We'll evolve when we want to. We're reptiles. We decide. No mother love, no promises. That's the deal. Don't get too near. Don't think too hard. Don't ever think we owe you anything, because we don't. Where were you when we hatched? You who never saw our shells, one perfect world piled on another, blue, brown, green. It's true, we made our way. To hell with your nipples, your kindergartens, your wedding bells, golden rings. We'll show you rings. We'll show you claws, too. Remember? The more you hurt, the more nothing. Go ahead, sing. We don't do music, don't do memories. Why, when we'll outlast you? We don't do fair or unfair, and we don't do thermostasis. Go ahead and cry. We're reptiles. We don't care.
Where's your illustration?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I will try to find it. Let's see. So this is a skink, which is, there's, I think the only lizard in Vermont is this. This is the skink. Right, so reptiles.
Great.
And we will have a few more poems in a moment after a few other things that I'll say, and then we're going to ask Steve Cramer up, and then we'll have some more poems from Michael Fleming's book. I just wanted to say a few more things about the book award, and that's this year, our first round readers are Diana Whitney, and we have Sue Burton. My brain is just going out of the window.
Myself and
Meg Reynolds and Neil Shepard, Diana Whitney, Sue Burton, and the other first round reader will come to me. Someone else really talented. And then we have Chantalee Gander as our final judge. And so I'm so glad that she will also be reading here at 3:00 with Steve Cramer. So she will be reading as the final judge. And like I said, submissions close at the end of this month. Send us your books. So some of the other collaborations between Green Writers Press and Sundog Poetry are not directly connected to a book award, but that once a year in collaboration, the press would put out a work by a Vermont poet. And so we have this anthology that Steve Cramer edited and put together. And this will be me passing the torch. And also the torch is a book. And so this is Steve Cramer's book. And he will read 3 poems. And you can explain why you chose those 2 poems.
I'm thinking 2 poems just because there's so much, lots of books to look at here. But yeah, so this is Turn It Up. It's music and poetry from jazz to hip hop. So it's got 3 sections. The first section is poems about jazz. Then we've got poems about blues and rock. And the last one is a section of poems about hip hop. So I think I'll at least do, let's see. Gotta find it is the thing about, oh, here we go. This one is by a guy named Michael Stillman, whose work I know lots of people in this anthology, lots of like famous poets, which is, like saying jumbo shrimp, but Michael Stillman is someone whose work I did not know, but this poem is one of my absolute favorites in here. All right. It's called In Memoriam John Coltrane. And pretty much what the poem does is it makes a pun on the guy's name. It's literally about a coal train. Bad pun, excellent poem. In Memoriam John Coltrane. Listen to the coal rolling, rolling through the cold, steady rain, wheel on wheel. Listen to the turning of the wheels this night, black as coal dust, steel on steel. Listen to these cars carry coal. Listen to the coal train roll. And what I just love about that poem is the sonics, right? I mean, vowels have weight, and, it starts off so heavy. E's and I's are high, O's are low, and so listen to the coal. Listen to the coal rolling, rolling through the cold, steady rain. It starts off heavy, like a train is heavy, like people describe John Coltrane's music as heavy, and then, all sorts of those high E's, the wheel on wheel, steel on steel, the cars carry coal, just lots of attention paid to, like I said, the sonics of this thing. It's also 3 haiku, which I think is pretty cool, right? I mean, the same way that jazz musicians work in a set form and improvise within that set form, this is what the poet is doing. Anyway, Michael Stillman, I was just so thrilled when I got that poem. All right, the second one is from the blues and rock section of this. It's by Julie Kane, who is a poet working in New Orleans. It's called Booker Again. And it's a bunch of 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 7 couplets. So again, the poet working in form. Booker is dead, but I still go sit on the maple leaf patio among the palmettos and elephant ears to listen to music and drink a few beers and check on the pink hibiscus tree firing its blossoms like flares at sea late in the year. Mention his name, and the bar help repeats the same handful of stories. How he vomited on the keys one night, and Big John had to clean it up with a bar rag. How the dope arrived by White Fleet cab. How he stood up once with his pants seat shitty. Beauty is truth, but truth is not pretty. I'm happy to just, is that cool, those two?
Yeah.
I want one more, but
I mean, I'll do one from the hip hop section if you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Okay, all right. It was just really fun also to see, this has poems from Langston Hughes from like 40s, and to see the progression of not only music, but how poets respond to this music. And so, the last section is some of the youngest poets and really just vibrant stuff going on in here. All right. Case in point. This is John Murillo. It's called Ode to the Crossfader. And if you don't know what a crossfader is, you probably do. But, if a DJ is working with two different records at the same time, scratching them or whatever, the toggle that goes back and forth between the two records, that's the crossfader. Got this mixed board itch, this bass line lifted from my father's dusty wax. 40 crates stacked in the back of the attic, this static in the headphones, hum in the blood, this deep bass buckshot thump in the chest. Got reasons and seasons pressed to both palms, 2 coins from each realm. This memory crossfaded and cued. These knuckles, nicks, and night sweat writes, this frantic abacus of scratch. Got blood in the crates, in the chest, in the dust. Field hollers to break beats, my father's dusty wax, my father's dust. Got reasons, got night sweats and hollers, pressed to both palms. Break beats and hollers pressed to both palms, static in the attic, stacked crates of memory. Dust, blood, and memory, crossfaded and bass crossfaded and cued, crossfaded and static, stacked, hollers. Got reasons in the dust, in the chest, got seasons in the blood, in the headphones hum, this deep bass buckshot, blood, pressed to both palms, my father's dust, pressed to both palms, got reasons and reasons and reasons. John Murillo.
Thank you so much. And I don't believe I mentioned this, but Steve Cramer is one of the featured poets of the Green Mountain Book Fest. So catch him at 3:00 with Chantilly Gander. And so I also didn't mention, not only is Steve Cramer an excellent anthologist, but will be reading from his own book, and is also a teacher at UVM. I just wanted to sprinkle in that little bio that I hadn't given you before. And so I just wanted to mention as well some of the other books that we have. I did mention Lucas Farrell's book, and the reason why his name escaped as one of the first round readers of this year's book award is that I had already mentioned him. He is one of the 3. So it'll be Diana Whitney and Lucas Farrell and Sue Burton, along with the 2 Sundog board members, and Meg Reynolds and Neil Shepard, and then Chantilly Gander will be the final judge. We also have a book up here by Neil Shepard, Vermont Exit Ramps, and we have, I forgot the title of the book. Thank you. And this is also interdisciplinary book. So Water Journeys in Art and Poetry, and this is by Mary Jane Dickerson, who was on the board for a very long time and was the vice president and one of the co-founders. Yeah. With Tamara Higgins. So please peruse the books afterwards. And I think that's all I'll say about the book award. I rambled.
No, that's great. So we would love to entertain questions from you about Sundog, about poetry in Vermont, anything we can try to answer.
And I think Bill also had a few more
yeah,
poems to read.
We do have more to read.
Recite, right?
Sure.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. We'll let Bill recite. You can be thinking of your questions.
Yeah.
So yes, Michael said instead of him being here, he'd love to have some of the poems read. This is Cutting the Grass. I tell myself I'm farming. Who's to say I'm not? My crop is meditations on blood-borne memories of scything the hay in County Cork, on wasted work, on the void, fruitless expenditure of time, on summer's exuberant duties, on the seventh day semiotics of trim, orderly boundaries, nature at bay, on the ordeals of beauty, the heat, the beer-tempered heat, and bugs and weeds and choices, and the meaning of the slow, soft encroachment of night. But I'm no farmer. I'm a fireman, beating my righteous blades against this quiet green inferno that burns at the speed of light. It's a great last couple of lines. In Michael's poems that in this book, most of them are that length, and they're sonnet sized, and it's wonderful how he pulls all of this music and thought and poetry into these nice blocks. He was also suggesting one of us read, standing in line at the liquor store. Waiting in line at the liquor store.
I love your voice the best. But if you
Meg,
Yeah,
would you
Meg's
like?
going to read from Lucas's work in a minute. too.
Yeah, you go for it, Bill, and I'll read Lucas's work.
Okay, just that one then. Waiting in line at the liquor store. That look we exchange at the liquor store. It's all right there. Shame, defiance, oblivion. The love we've been denied. Let's ignore the voice of the village scold. Let's not give ourselves up to the perp talk. Flashing red lights in the rear view. The deputy's soft knock in the middle of the night. Screaming fights and the drunken uncle whose wine-crazy talk ruins everything. I guess I agree. Booze leads to madness. Sometimes in those who drink, and always in those who don't. Those who choose to scorn the devil's alchemy. But think of it. Money turned to spirits. America's hardest fought dollar in exchange for song, friends, poetry, moments without care, the loving cup, the lifted chalice, strangeness. Don't I know you from somewhere? Wasn't I that ape man in the cave of magic berries, and you that ape woman wandering by, she who grunted, fancy meeting you here?
Thank you, Bill.
And now Meg Reynolds will read from Lucas Farrell's work. This was chosen by Mary Ruffel, by the
Yes.
way. Yeah, she was the final judge for that.
It's a wonderful book. I would highly recommend anyone pick up a copy. One of the things I admire about Lucas Farrell's work is his incredible eye for rare language, and that makes the book is split into 3 sections. The first, a series of poems that contemplate many things, including man's relationship to the earth. He lives and works on a farm, and so that appears here. The second section is a series of found poems lifted from a novel, and it's like his interrogation and this eye for rare language is part of what lifts his these poems off the page. And then he has a final section that is hybrid work, photographs and sort of his poetry that all sort of interrogates a hook. And so there's this incredible focus on this hook, and how does anyone contemplate so deeply this one object, weaving through his own stories? It's a great thing. So I'm going to read from the first section. First, this poem, Gertrude gives birth to twins. I'll actually take my mask off for this. Gertrude gives birth to twins. To birth is to take in fresher aspects of an owl's nest strewn in a white field, my brother coughing up sunlight in a white field, feathers. 5 o'clock half grazes the snowed-in shadows, meaning her kids arrived here as into a flood, as out of some liquid prayer. O Gertrude, whose placenta stretches clear across this skyline, I will listen, listen, listen to all the unmurdered birds singing in the laboring heights. Then I'll read another called from the first section entitled Wildflowers. Casually, an acorn birds into the half-light out of a fern's pursed anus, skids across the parlor floor. October 7th, 6 a.m., through the window, leaves emulsify in the horizontal loin of daybreak. A horticultural blue awakens, hurls the shape of an oak tree at an oak tree. Horseflies pendulum above a shit pile. I hear the horseflies. I smell the shit pile in that order. It's okay, I tell the goats. Be easy. Wildflowers grow rampant in the throats of opera singers.
But yeah, one more.
Okay, all right, let's find one more. All right. Let's do tending. What's it like being a mammal? I half expected the irresponsive donkey to bleed sap water from its haunches, having moved on to the ethics of March. Mud season. I insert the thermometer into the rectum, press the little button, wait 6 seconds, look up, try to source the chickadee's song. Trace the song to the branch of a sugar maple upon which it sits. Nothing. Breathe, listen, like inventing the blues. Later on, someone will tell me it's actually a red maple. Which one? Beep. 103.6. The sap is running like blue fish through a fresh dream. Danny says it's carrying a 3.4% sugar content, meaning 40-1. We all agree that sounds pretty like a face. What a day, what with all these blessed actuals. The donkey rolls back onto her side, but her gaze tangles up with the blue beyond, meaning she's stuck with that far-off look in her eyes. What's it like being a mammal? Someone said it's like directing traffic in a dream, like two birds perched on a limb in the dead of winter, one keeping itself alive by pecking flesh off the other. Sad story. The sap is running hard like a fat man on a treadmill. Come on, laugh a little. This whiskey tastes like deer breath.
Great, thank you for reading this. So I think we're ready for questions now. If anyone, and also you're welcome to come up at any point and sign up if you want to get a newsletter to hear about it. Sundog happening.
So just a few words from the beginning. Mary Jane Dickerson of Jericho and Tamara Higgins of Cambridge, Jeffersonville, were the founders of Sundog Poetry. It goes back to 2014, I think. And neither are on the board anymore. And they handed the baton to a number of us. We have eight board members at the moment. And it's their mission was to support poets in general and to publish books as well. and to present these venues for it all to happen and audiences for the poets. And I believe they had a successful start to this. And it's great to work with Rebecca, Meg, Francis, and the others.
Yes. No worries. Yeah, I mean, do you think you can answer that one?
Why just one comes to mind, just the Green Writers Press, just that all of the books that we have published so far have been with D.D. Cummings and Green Writers Press. So that's one off the top of my head.
Yeah, and then Share Your Heart, of course, it connects with a number of high schools around the area. And then there's a Field or Farm connection for the retreat. That's a little different. But we have done things and collaborated with libraries in the past and sort of putting on different readings. We would like to do even more of that. Yeah, it's a small organization, but I don't know. I think we figured out we serve maybe 300 audience members in a year, probably. And we try to reach areas that don't always have a big poetry, world around them. Burlington gets tons of poetry readings, but not always in Jeffersonville or somewhere else further out. So we're also always happy to hear if you're from a town that you would love to see poets coming to, like, let us know. We can.
Yeah, and just that I think that this might be, it's obvious to many of us, but not those who don't know Sundog poetry, but most of our events are free. And we don't have a brick and mortar location, so it's a lot of the AMP nights and other events and readings happen all around Vermont. So we've had events recently. We had St. Albans and Huntington near Camel's Hump, or is that Heinsberg? Huntington is where it is. And we had Putney, several events in Putney, and that was a long drive for me as a Burlingtonian, but such a beautiful event and a beautiful drive. We had Shelburne and Richmond. Actually, I'm thinking of the wrong event. So just that it's kind of all over the state and for many ages. And most of these events are free, and we want them to be as accessible as possible. Like if you're thinking, oh, I'm not a poet, but I'm a teacher, there are lots of ways to get involved as a teacher. Or if you're a student, or if you are a parent of poets, or there's so many different avenues to get involved with Sundog poetry.
Yeah, I think the only one that charges is the retreat, and that also we can accommodate need. So, Frank, and then
Yeah, I was curious, how long has Sundog been in existence? I was lucky enough to be coming to the shop. Cows
And poets.
and poets.
But anyway, so that's one question. How long has it been in existence? And then over the course of it, how difficult or not?
Yeah, so 2014 was when it was founded. I think there was a place where, it's mostly it was the board doing all of the work. So I think a few people maybe felt like they had they had maxed out. And then we decided to hire a managing director maybe 3 years ago. And so Francis is our second one, and that has really helped things keep going and bringing on new board members. We have Char Denure down in Putney area, and Neil Shepard, who's our president right now, and Larissa Hebert, who was first a teacher. A lot of people are connected to the program, and then they end up serving on the board at some point. And so it's spreading out the work has been key. But it has been, I think it's just continued to thrive. COVID obviously, made some things hard to do. So we didn't get to do some of our core programs for a couple of years, but now we've been able to bounce back with most of those. And we rely on, there's a few big donors, there's grants, and there's a lot of individual small donors, and we really just rely on that. But it's going strong so far.
And also recently, Emer Feeney, who
Yes,
works
sorry.
here at the
Yeah,
library, and Barbara Murphy, Meg Reynolds, obviously recent acquisition. Who else are we missing?
I think that might have been it.
Yeah.
I think they've got
And-
sorry
and-
for the Eber and Barbara. Yeah.
Yeah, the one person we haven't mentioned from the board is Chard Denord, who was the poet laureate for Vermont up until a couple of years ago.
Yep. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I spent some time in Tallahassee, Florida. Sundog. You know,
Probably. yeah, probably.
We haven't been too worried about the trademarking. I don't
Crossover.
know. We haven't been.
I think there's a Sundog journal.
There's a Sundress. There's
Yes.
Sundress.
Yeah, Sundress is
Publication.
pretty big.
Yeah.
And we recently, can I announce this?
Sure.
We recently changed the name. So this logo is a little bit out of date. Since we don't actually have a brick and mortar, we've recently changed from Sundog Poetry Center to Sundog Poetry. Not a huge change, but just, and then there are probably many other Sundogs, but yeah, Sundogs are beautiful. So nice
Inspiring,
phrase.
I don't actually know what time it is. Oh, see, this is about probably when we should break. So
Yeah.
unless there's a last pressing question, you're free to come and talk to any of us individually also if you have
Yeah.
questions after.
If you're too shy to sign up or look through the books or talk to us, then definitely look us up online, or just take one of these postcards, and you can find out about the programs and the book award and
Yeah.
other things.
Sundogpoetry.org, right? That's our, Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.